All right. Well, you'll be glad to know that a lot of the stuff I'm going to share with you directly complements our last speaker rather than goes against what was said. Over the next sort of 27 minutes or so, I'm going to share with you a few stats, a little bit of science, and a whole lot of practical things that you can take away to tackle this thing that we call appreciation. Now, I guess my first question, as I try to do when I do all of my keynotes around appreciation, is get you thinking about when was the last time you truly felt appreciated. So perhaps in the chat, if you're able, or at least just have a think about it yourselves. When was the last time that someone made you feel truly appreciated? And what did you feel in that moment? What did they say? How did you react? How did it make you feel? And what did you do as a result of feeling that particular way? Because that feeling is something that is far beyond just a fluffy HR thing. Actually, it's a key lever that we can pull to drive high performance in our organizations. Now, a bit of context setting here. 2026. I remember doing a keynote back in 2025 and having 2025 on a slide rather than 2026 and talking very openly and saying, gosh, 2025, what a tricky year this has been. But don't worry, we just need to ride out the bumpiness of 2025 and 2026 will be much more smooth and much easier to navigate. And then 2026 has come along and it's slapped 2025 in the face and said, wise up, as we say where I'm from in Northern Ireland. I'm much more complicated, much more complex. And do you know what? I've got a feeling 2027 might even be worse. So we have to recognize that the context of the world right now is just a little bit mad. It's a little bit nuts. And particularly how we feel that in business settings, it's forever changing. And this concept of change, I think, is far beyond any program or any thing that we can do where it starts and ends. Actually, change very much right now is just an everyday reality. Now, I mentioned to you a few stats. Well, let me start with a couple of stats which are impacting the HR community, because when I talk about appreciation and creating a culture of appreciation, whilst HR are not the sole keepers of making it happen, we are usually the ones that start the conversation and create the space for it to happen. But in real terms, what's happening right now? Well, across 2026, HR teams, over a third are seeing our budgets cut. That stat improves, or whatever, improves is probably the wrong word. Gets even worse is probably the right way to say it. It goes up for organizations or HR teams that are unable to successfully demonstrate return on investment. So it jumps from 1/3 up to about 2/3 if you're unable to demonstrate return on investment for all the people initiatives that you put in place. And I guess as a consequence, perhaps, of budgets being cut and having a culture that we can't quite influence because perhaps the time isn't there, the world's a bit mad, perhaps we don't have the money or the headcount or the resource or even the brain power to think about it anymore, keeping our best people is also keeping people professionals up at night. So we have less money and we've got our best people potentially leaving, possibly to a competitor. That creates a space where we think, crikey, our organization right now is under massive stress. And crikey, I feel like I'm under massive stress because I happen to work in the people profession. Now, I've never met anyone who grew up as a kid thinking, gosh, you know what? I want to be an HR professional when I grow up. So that's what I do. My role as a people experience director. I've worked across HR and various different disciplines within the HR community for the last 20 years, but I never set out to do it. So I often think, who are the types of characters that get into roles like people, like helping people? And it is people pleasers. It is people who genuinely care about other human beings. And that's really important when it comes to thinking about appreciation, because when the organization is under stress, chances are the people teams are feeling that stress. And no doubt that is filtered all the way down to our teams, our managers, as the previous speaker was talking about, and potentially that ripple effect outwardly to our clients, our customers, and even our shareholders. So why does that matter? Why do we need to know that the world's gone crazy? Why do we need to know that organizations are under stress and our budgets are down and our resources are under strain? It's because we need to think about a different way of approaching it. Quite often people say to me, and there's a popular phrase, particularly here in the UK, about how do we do more with less? How do we do more because my to-do list gets bigger, but I know my time is getting shorter, my budgets are cutting, my headcount resource is down. But actually, I'm a big fan of this phrase. How do we do less with less, but make sure we make it count? And that's why I encourage all of you, whatever your role is, whatever discipline you do, maybe in the people profession, or any impact you have on teams around you, people around you, the human beings around you, is use an evidence-based approach to start with the stuff that's making the biggest impact and do that. Anything that you can't really demonstrate that's having much of an impact, I suggest you discard it or come back to it when times are a little bit better. Now, what is evidence-based HR or evidence-based more broadly? I can apply these principles to creating an evidence-based culture, of which appreciation is a key lever. So the first four boxes that you can see on the screen here, when we talk about evidence-based, I highly recommend that we look at what's going on outwardly. What's the latest research telling us? And whether that's through organizations like Gallup, whether that's through organizations like the one I work for, or Gateways, we produce our own research. Maybe it's the Office of National Statistics. Maybe it's just reading a new book that's just come out. Whatever. What's going on in the wider world in terms of data? What are the trends telling you? What's the future of work look like? Because that paints a bit of a picture and it gives us a bit of a jigsaw piece to start creating our puzzles. Once we know what's happening externally, then we can start mapping that against our organizational data. So what's our own data tell us? Now, this could be your people metrics. Maybe it's your retention rates. Maybe it's your internal mobility rates. Maybe it's your percentage of high performers versus low performers. Maybe it's your absenteeism and how often people are off sick. Maybe it's how likely people are to recommend you as a place to work or do business with. There's lots of organizational data that you can get hold of, but also you can include in that your profit and loss data. What money are you making? What money are you saving? What's your share price right now? And what impact do you want to have? How does your business strategy play into that? You can then overlay that second jigsaw piece with what do your stakeholders want from you? Your senior leaders, your C-suite, your managers, your teams, your employees that you've yet to hire, your customers. What do your stakeholders want from you now and in the future? And then, of course, one thing we always forget to do when we're too busy being analyzing all the data and all the numbers is we forget to add in on top of this, what's our professional expertise tell us? What's our gut instinct tell us? What does our heart tell us? And what does our heads tell us based on our own professional experience, perhaps mistakes we've learned in the past? But one thing that I'm really here to talk to you about is wrapping around all of that is how do we create a space where appreciation becomes a real, tangible thing that helps create the culture and make sure that it's based on science and behavior to drive business performance. So let's get into it. Let's get into what on earth is this concept of appreciation. Well, if we look in the dictionary defines appreciation like this. It says it's the act of recognizing or understanding that something or someone is valuable or important. That's pretty good. I mean, it's got the word recognizing in there, and quite often it begs the question, and it's a question I quite often get asked. Well, isn't appreciation just the same thing as recognition? Yes and no. Let me explain to you where I see the core difference between recognition and appreciation and why it matters for you and your business and your people. Recognition, I think, on a very basic level, is recognizing or celebrating something or someone for the work that they have done for you. So perhaps it's work they've done on a project as part of their job description, as part of their salary, as in they're paid to do that job, and that's what they've done. Now, you might celebrate their actions, you might celebrate the outputs. Maybe they've delivered a project ahead of time, maybe they've saved you a little bit of money, and maybe they've reached a key milestone. So typically recognition is at that level of you're celebrating or recognizing the work that someone does for you. When we talk about appreciation, we lift it up a level and we say, do you know what? Thank you for all the work you do for us, but we want to celebrate who you are. We want to celebrate the human being behind the payroll number. And that's when we start looking at things like that person's character, the values they bring, the effort they put in. So perhaps they didn't achieve the outcome that they set out to achieve, but they put a lot of effort in and they did the best they could in the circumstances they had. But really importantly, when it comes to appreciation, how do we celebrate people's uniqueness? What they bring, which no one else brings, their unique selling point as a human being. So I guess in really simple terms, appreciation is not just about what we do. Appreciation is about who we are. Now, when it comes to organizations and understanding why this matters, it's important that we think a little bit about the science that sits behind it. And the power that appreciation has should not be underplayed when it comes to driving successful organizations, driving profitability, driving high performance. So let me share with you a little bit of neuroscience. Now, you don't need to be a neuroscientist to understand some of the words on the screen here, because you might have heard a few of them before. Things like our happy hormones, things like oxytocin, which increases trust and bonding, and our serotonin levels that makes us feel a little bit more stable. Dopamine is that hit of feeling good, that motivation, that reinforces that when something feels nice, we want more of it. So when we have a culture of appreciation where people are seen for not just what they do, but who they are, we're actively rewiring their brain, not just for triggering all the nice hormones that exist, but actually reducing some of the stress-based hormones. Cortisol is one of the ones perhaps we've heard of a lot in high stress situations or high stress environments. So having a culture where people are seen as human beings and not just employees actively reduces their stress levels in their neurochemicals within their brain. So within simple terms, for example, if we create a workplace where appreciation is at its very core, appreciation can help turn things like social connection into an intrinsic reward, i.e., I've connected and collaborated with my colleagues, and it feels good to me. So I want to do more of it. I want to connect. I want to share. I want to help. I'm actively rewiring my brain to be a bigger and better team player. It doesn't just rewire my brain for that, though. It rewires my brain to create some trust, empathy for myself and other people, but also drive myself for personal growth and career development. But I can also rewire my brain if I have long-term appreciation, that it feels like, again, something I want to do. I don't just want to have appreciation or receive it, I want to give it, because that feeling of giving and receiving is in equal balance with each other. I can also personally and interpersonally connect a little bit easier. And the science is here. The science of gratitude is an evolving and ever-changing science, but it's one which is getting a lot more work attention, because the days of just chucking more money at people and hoping they're happy are probably gone for a lot of organizations. The budgets just aren't there anymore. And perhaps those old views of chucking more money at people, maybe an annual bonus, where we thought that's them happy now for another 12 months. We're now starting to think a little bit differently. Because of those happy moments, if it's based purely on salary or package alone, they're kind of like a one-hit wonder. It feels good in the moment, but when the stress of the workload is there, I don't have a great relationship with my colleagues, my manager isn't being very kind to me, we quickly forget the salary and we start thinking about it in a more humanistic way. So salary alone isn't enough. It probably hasn't been enough for a while, but creating a culture where people feel seen and heard, that's where the strategic lever really comes into play. And what do the stats tell us? Well, the stats tell us that when people feel appreciated, they're far more likely to work harder, be more actively engaged in your organization, and they're actively more satisfied with their job, i.e., they're less likely to leave and go to a potential competitor. Now, how great would the workplace be if we had our whole organization working harder, loving the work that they do, and staying with us a little bit longer? Now, how does that translate directly into productivity in the bottom line? Well, this piece of research says that people who are just recognized in the work that they do, they get a 23% boost in productivity, and that's pretty good. 23% is not a small number, and that's pretty good if we just focus on the recognition side of things. But if we can elevate that to appreciation, where people are seen for who they are, not just what they do, that jumps a huge 20 percentage points up to 43%. So again, imagine your workforces where your teams are 43% more effective and 43% performing better and more productive. That changes everything. Now, when we think about this from an HR perspective, I'm very, very aware that there are a lot of teams out there, particularly non-people related teams. I'm thinking CFOs, I'm thinking task related CEOs, people who think task or money first before people. Quite often terms like appreciation are laughed out of the boardroom, or they don't really get it. It's seen as fluffy HR rhetoric, they roll their eyes, and they struggle to understand how that's going to make the business money or save the business money. So language can be really important here. I talk about emotional and capital. So this is the investment that we get from our employees into the business. And it's through less tangible things, including building trust, morale, connection, and appreciation. So how does all of that link together? Well, when we think about emotional capital, so remember trust, morale, general levels of happiness and appreciation, we know and we can show that reduces absenteeism. So that's going to reduce people's stress, make them more engaged, make them want to work harder, stay longer, and therefore it's going to reduce the amount of time they're not working, or if they are working and they've got a touch of presenteeism, as in they're there, but they're not firing on all cylinders, then we know that's going to have a direct impact on retention and productivity. Now, this is retention of our best people, not retention of our people who are just phoning it in. Now, if people and our best people are staying and they're actively more productive, we know that's going to drive business growth in whatever way your business measures your growth. And we know that's going to impact firm value, shareholder value, stock market value, profit, whatever way you measure it. And of course, what can we do with that profit and that extra money? We can reinvest it back into our people and particularly into our people initiatives. But here's the thing, and this is where it builds really nicely on the previous presentation. We cannot do this alone within the people profession. And actually, appreciation is a skill that only the classiest of leaders have as a natural starting point. So we have to help bring this to life by making sure that the people who have the most impact on the culture within our organization, i.e. our first line managers, know exactly what we mean, how to do it, and they've got the support to bring it to life. So this doesn't feel like an HR thing, actually, and what culture should be, it's an everyone thing. But particularly with our line managers, we've got to start there. And here's one of the ways we can do it and how it's going to help HR as well. So we talk about this concept of decentralization. Do you know, for years, I read the research reports that come out. I'm sure a lot of people listening back to this will know exactly what I mean. These are reports that typically come out at the end of a calendar year or the beginning of a new year, which says, these are the business trends. These are the things that are going to be hot in 2026 that every business or every people professional or every HR team needs to know about. And I'm pretty sure ever since those reports came out, near top of the list, certainly in the top 3, has always been line manager and leadership capability. So it suggests to me, if it keeps reappearing as a priority focus for that coming year and it keeps being on that list time after time after time, we haven't quite got it right. We haven't quite found the sweet spot to support that group of people. So part of this decentralization mindset and methodology and model is we have to make sure that we equip our first-time line managers or first line managers with the skills they need to bring appreciation to life. Now, this is not just about how to conduct a grievance or how to hold a performance review or how to interview someone without breaking the law. That's all important stuff. Of course, it's important stuff, but that's so basic now. And that's what I would call a hygiene factor within management development. It's the basics. It's management 101. Where we need to be a little bit different and where we need to think differently is we need to think about skills around the human behavior, the human beings that are in the organizations, the human beings that sit behind our employees. So skills like driving levels of emotional intelligence, helping our managers understand the power of empathy, helping our managers understand the value of flexibility, inclusivity, helping our managers understand how to read a profit and loss sheet, helping our managers understand the importance of strategy, delegation. These are all important skills that we typically skip over or we don't even talk about at all, particularly your first-time line managers, and then we wonder why they get it wrong, or we wonder why we get frustrated when they don't seem to be doing what we expect them to do. But as well as equipping our line managers with all of those new skills, we've got to empower our leaders to be a little bit more autonomous. So where HR historically has perhaps held all the cards, maybe the budget, held all the authority to make decisions, let's empower our managers and our leaders to do that for us. We can be there as a stopgap, a safety net, but when it comes to appreciation in particular, rewarding their teams, celebrating their teams in whatever way they see fit, let's not create any red tapes or barriers to allow them to do it. Let's empower them properly so they can go out and make it happen. What that then means is they are providing more direct employee support. That means then our employees, our people, our human beings will be much more aware of things like our benefits, the impact it can have on them and their lives. And then what that does for us within the people profession, it frees up our time, frees up our resource, frees up our headspace to do some of the more strategic stuff, which we're all crying out to have a little bit more space and time to do. So decentralization is super, super important. But of course, I'm just building on what we talked about in the previous conversation just before I started here. I'm just sharing with you some UK stats, but no doubt these stats translate all the way across the world. Our managers right now are not getting it right for lots of different reasons. Firstly, because we're not treating them as human beings first. We've treated them in an old traditional management sense. We haven't recognized the transformation that being a line manager or leader has had in the last few years, the expectations from different generations, for example. So you can see some of the stats on here where, 40% of employees here in the UK say that their line manager does not regularly check in with them on their well-being. 36% says their manager doesn't recognize them for their efforts or achievements. And over 30% say their managers doesn't even keep them informed about what's going on within the business. So there's something fundamentally broken right now. If we want to create a high performance culture centered around appreciation, this group of people is absolutely at the heart of it. One of the phrases I love, and I often talk about this because I've been in this situation myself when I've been on the receiving end of this, is bad bosses absolutely ruin lives. A piece of research that Reward Gateway put out recently when it comes to driving emotional capital and driving business success through employee happiness and appreciation, it asked employees around the world, what are the top 3 things that make you happy within the workplace? Now, a lot of people might think, given cost of living crisis and everything else that's going on, that better salary might be top of the list. Actually, it's number 3. So it's the third on the list of people saying, I want more money. Number 2 on that list about what makes people the happiest is interesting work. So how do I show up every day and know I've got purpose and I'm doing interesting and meaningful work? Number 1 on the list, the thing that makes me the happiest and makes me feel like I'm appreciated every single day, is the relationship I've got with my direct line manager and my senior leaders. So again, if you haven't got the message by now, if you're not investing in this group of people, but investing in what it's needed for 2026, then you're missing a trick. And actually what you're doing is creating a space where some of your bad bosses might well ruin the lives of your best employees. All right, just as I start to wrap up here and wind down, I talked to you about at the very beginning about some practical things that you could do to bring this to life within your organizations. So here's just 5 things. There's a ton more that you can do as well. But number 1, make appreciation visible. So whether you use some form of technology, a platform, or something physical in your office spaces, or using a piece of software through Microsoft Teams or something like that, create a space where appreciation is visible to everyone, because that breeds the behavior that we want to breed. We want people to feel it, see it, hear it, and want to give it back. The second thing we can do, and this is where we can help our line managers, is create a space within our regular one-to-ones and our meetings where there's a protected time and space for appreciation. So perhaps as part of your meeting guidelines that you have within your organization, you encourage every line manager to start their team meeting with a moment in time where they celebrate someone within their team. Or maybe as part of one-to-ones, you don't just get into the business talk first. Actually, you talk about the human being that's across the table from you before you get into anything about the business side of things. We can celebrate milestones, we can celebrate life events and the humanity of it all, the moments that matter to the human beings, not just the employees. And that can be things like projects they've completed, promotions that they've had, but also could be things like they've just passed their driving test, they've just bought their first house, they've just returned from parental leave, they've just got married, they've just got divorced. Whatever has made them happy, celebrate those moments with your people and understand that you see them as people first, not just payroll numbers. If you're not already thinking about emotional capital as part of your business strategy or your people strategy, I encourage you to research it a little bit more and get it in there. Start talking in that type of language. And I promise you, even the most cynical of CFOs and financial directors and CEOs will start listening to what you've got to say because you're speaking their language. And then reinforce the message. Celebrate in your town halls. Show up on your social media, your company LinkedIn pages, and encourage your people to leave Glassdoor reviews or exit data. We encourage people to talk about you in a favorable way. Talk to your talent that you're bringing into the business about why it matters to your culture and to your people so they can hit the ground running as well. So just before I wrap up here, and I'll invite Matt back onto the stage here in just 1 second, just remember this. If you don't show appreciation to those who deserve it, they'll learn to stop doing the things that you appreciate. That's when your very best people will lower their standards to the standards of your very worst people. Or even worse than that, they'll take their high performance and they'll go to one of your direct competitors. So appreciation is far from a fluffy HR topic. It's a key lever as part of your business strategy to help drive the culture that you want and the high performance that you need. Thank you so much for listening into this. I hope you found it useful. Feel free to connect with me on my LinkedIn. I'm always sharing some latest research, some stories, some stats on there. You can find me on there pretty easily. And I look forward to connecting with you further on then. And then, Matt, feel free to jump on if you've got any questions for me or just to close this out. I'm all ears.
Yeah, thank you so much, Chris. And I'd echo your last sentiment there about connecting with you on LinkedIn. I love the content you put out there. Really, really personable and insightful. So just echoing that. But thank you so much for a fantastic talk. So much in there. Made me laugh at the beginning. Get through 2025, 2026 will be better. And we had a talk yesterday from Dr. Tracy Brower, and she mentioned that we live in a VUCA world, a volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. So essentially a chaotic environment. And I related to that because I thought 2026 would be a bit easier, and it's more complex, it's more hard, and I think probably going to carry on that way. But so much in there, the extrinsic versus intrinsic, and what I loved was the clarity you brought to this topic. And looking at the time we've got left, I think, and leading on from Carl Maria earlier, having that, what you've given, I think, is a beautifully simple North Star, but powerful. Like simple is sometimes seen as a negative, and you're saying do less with less. And so I hopefully you don't take it in that way. For your line managers and your people, if you're showing and acting with appreciation, that's an amazing first step to build upon as you work out everything else. If people are doing that and showing that and connecting with their teams through appreciation and seeing that person, that's an incredibly powerful first step, and obviously then can run throughout an organization. So it was a really inspiring talk, to be honest with you, Chris. So I appreciate it, for want of a better word. So how are you finding doing it with your team and your organization? It would be my question I'd throw back at you, I guess.
Yeah, a really great question. It's something we strive to practice what we preach, if not more. So always looking what we can do better, because one of the things that's definitely true about the landscape that we're in right now, the future of work, is it continues to evolve at a rapid pace.
Yeah.
So what previously we might look year over year at our benefit strategy or people strategy, whatever, actually we need to be a little bit more fluid than that. A little bit more progress rather than perfection, a little bit more test, learn, move on quickly. But that all starts by having an approach and understanding what it is you're trying to achieve, which is the evidence-based thing. So know what you want to achieve and go after it rather than just hoping that you chuck stuff out there and it lands.
Yeah, fantastic. Is there anything you'd like to say as a final thought before we wrap up today?
Only just to start somewhere. So if you see the human being behind the employee, I think that's almost becoming a given now for prospective employees, particularly younger generations. They're no longer jobs for life types of people. They want to be treated as a person first and an employee second. Businesses who get that right now will flourish. Businesses that put that off and say, well, we pay them to do a job, they'll just show up and do their best work. It's a risky strategy to have, particularly in the world that we're in right now.
Could not agree with you more. So thank you so much, Chris, for your time and your expertise and coming on the summer series. Thank you very much. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.